A new role for what may be the world's last heavy bomber.
We're going to get targets, change, and threat updates in the cockpit while we're flying into theater.
The B-1B Lancer, the heavy hitter of a new expeditionary strike force. Mountain Home Air Force Base, Idaho. Home to the U.S. Air Force's first Air Expeditionary Wing, the 366th. A powerful, self-contained miniature Air Force, ready to fly halfway around the world to stop an invading army in its tracks. At the heart of the Expeditionary Force, the B-1B Lancer, the world's most lethal heavy bomber. B-1Bs entered battle for the first time in December 1998. In punishing raids on Iraq called Desert Fox.
Start engines!
Captain Kevin Kennedy, Trap, is a B-1B bomber pilot.
34th Bomb Squadron. We are in part of the 366 Air Expeditionary Wing. We're the heavy strikers. We carry the most payload to the fight for the whole wing.
At Mountain Home, fighters, strike aircraft, tankers, and heavy bombers, trained together as a single unit, ready to race to a distant battlefield and start dropping bombs in less than 36 hours from a standing start.
Ready for takeoff. Ready for takeoff, pilot, go.
We have no self-protection capability as far as missiles or anything like that. So that's why the fighters are stationed here with us. Then we can work out our tactics. And when we employ in a quick scenario, we don't have to go through that period of getting to know each other and learning how we operate.
In a radical post-Cold War reorganization, the U.S. Air Force will create 10 of these Air Expeditionary Wings. 2 of them on alert, ready to fly in a few hours' notice. To the head of Air Combat Command, General Richard Hawley, the modified B-1B is the key to a revamped Air Force.
The B-1 sure has matured. It was built and designed as a nuclear bomber. It was purely a nuclear bomber at birth. It was still a nuclear bomber in 1990 and 91 when we fought the Gulf War, and that's why it didn't participate in that conflict. But since then, we have modified the airplane to focus its capabilities on conventional conflict. It now delivers conventional weapons. Currently, it can deliver the Mark 82, the Mark 84 cluster munitions. And in the very near future, it will be able to deliver the whole family of GPS-aided munitions. The J-weapons, as I call them, JDAM, JSOW, JASM, and the wind-corrected munitions dispenser. And it delivers those weapons in huge quantities at very long range. And so it is now the backbone of our conventional bomber deterrent.
2 of the bombers have been equipped with state-of-the-art data link communication systems. With them, the B-1Bs can be retargeted in flight. It's never been tried before. To test the new systems, the 366th will engage in EFX 98, an expeditionary force experiment. The scenario: an American ally is being invaded. 2.5 armored divisions spearhead an attack.
Let's do a 360 to the left, slow down.
If it works, it will revolutionize command and control.
You gonna be on time next year? Yeah.
Bottom line, we're a bomber. So we've been practicing, bombs on target on time. And that's what we've been doing here. We fly a great deal in our local range. 5 seconds to 15. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hack. What was our big picture plan? We're going to go out there and attack a single. Now we've been transitioning, leading up into is what we're calling surface attack, where we've been integrating all our tactics from threat reactions, weapons employment, packaging considerations into actual target prosecution. The target we're hitting today is target 83. It's on the eastern edge of the Mountain Home Range Complex. It's just a cylinder out there, but we're using this to simulate a convoy of trucks on a target when we go down the exercise in Florida. Final crunch point here.
This elite force practices daily for its new role with the AEF, the Air Expeditionary Force.
What the AEF does is give us an organizational structure where rather than deploying as individual units without any prior coordination or training with the other units, they will be organized into expeditionary forces. They will have an opportunity to train together, prepare together, get their operating procedures standardized so that when they deploy and show up in a theater of operations, they will be a coherent force.
Brigadier General Mark Schmidt commands the 366th Wing.
If we can get strategic warning on something and we're seeing it coming, then it's fully reasonable that I could be packed up and moving towards that hot spot within about 24 hours. If I focused on my unit and they said, stand by, something hot's happening, it's not reasonable to think I could be airborne with a bunch of folks in 8 hours. So the mission of my wing remains responsive combat power very quickly, already packaged and trained and deployable.
The big thing for us, why we're here rather than some of the other bombers, is we can keep up with the Strike Eagles and the F-15s and the F-16. We fly the same airspeeds. But it is an incredibly responsive airplane. It's a very stable airplane. And you put it where you want it, and it'll stay there. And when you want to roll out, it'll roll out then.
Lieutenant Colonel Tom Ritchie commands the 34th Bomb Squadron.
34th is pretty special because it is the first B-1 that's been fully integrated into the Air Expeditionary Wing. When I was a young guy flying this airplane, we were alone and unarmed and very afraid, on a long-range strike mission. And now we're, no kidding, fully integrated in the package, and we're the only bomber that can do that.
B-1 crew is a 4-person. We have 2 pilots in the front, which can sit in either seat, and we have 2 WISOs, or weapons systems officers, in the back. Typical mission, we'll take off out of here and then proceed to our range, which is just right in our back door, about 20 miles away. In preparation for the experiment that we're going down to Florida to perform, we've been doing some flying here in the local area with our new equipment. The equipment we're getting provides more information into the cockpit than we've had before. That means we're going to get targets, change, and threat updates in the cockpit while we're flying into theater.
That changing target information, weather intelligence, everything needed for command and control of the wing's air offensive will be provided by an operations center that can be carried on a pallet. The pallet is air mobile. It can be rolled on and off a KC-135 tanker, flown ahead of the bombers, processing information in flight. One of its designers, Major Craig Soup Campbell.
The primary purpose of this pallet was to demonstrate the en route capability that we have. And because of that, we wanted to develop a system that would allow them to increase their situational awareness, to understand what's going on around them better, so when they hit the ground, they're better prepared for the situation or whatever situation might arise.
The portable pallet is also the brainchild of Major Dirk Hutchinson.
The experiment is now testing technologies to allow us to talk en route to the AEF and keep them continually fed with information along the way. Now we'll be able to have continual updates from weather, intelligence. Did the scenario change? Did they change where we're going to go to? Or are we going to employ en route? Or are we just going to go and show a force?
The way things are changing on the new battlefield, we need information as soon as we can get it, and this is an optimal way of doing that.
Target area is in sight. Mapping.
We got down to about 500 feet, and we proceeded in on the Mountain Home Range Complex. We made a mapping maneuver at the initial point, or IP, and at that point what is happening is my WISO, weapons system officer, he's taking a look at the target area on his radar.
Trap, can you give me 10 right, please?
Captain David Hickey aims the bombs and pulls the trigger.
I'll basically be dropping 2 bays full of BDU-50 air high drag weapons, which are basically an inert 500-pound bomb that we used to practice out in the range.
So we action, ideally about 30 to 45 degrees. Action, we get a picture. Once the WISO call's captured on the target, then we just come back in and we were looking for a specific course.
Elevation 134, B formation of armor, 12 tanks, threats.
Captain George Rehola, Spot, one of the B-1B's two WISOs. During the EFX experiment, his console will be linked to a global communications network.
With the defensive systems officer, you're involved in managing the electronic countermeasures of the aircraft and basically keeping high situation awareness.
How is the target? Everything good?
Yeah, I was on it. A couple minutes ago.
All right, boys, all we got left is put iron on target.
It's like anything else you do if you're training for a football game or you're training for a soccer game or you're practicing for a big race. The more times you do it, the more time your habit patterns get built up.
25 minutes in the range will seem to go by in about 5 minutes. You've got a scan going from screen to navigation data, listening up on the radios. You've got 2 different radios going at once. You've got 3 other crew members going on at the same time. Then you got your scan going back on again all over again. Okay, I got a new threat there. I got to deal with this.
With our high-resolution ground map, we're able to take pictures of the target deep onto the battlefield so that we can basically have our bombing system fixed.
Unless I visually look at a target and I think that the aiming solution is a little bit off, I'm worried about basically centering it up. And a lot of times they say, center it up, stick boy.
And Sailor Fallon, we're going to be unable any further passes. We're pretty much done. Roger that, sir. Understand Union Code.
Film 3 was back in the local area. We'll be landing on time. We have 2...
EFX 98 is a major test of the Air Expeditionary Force concept. Trap Kennedy will be asked to fly from Idaho to Florida to find and bomb an armored column that is on the move.
34 Juliet, Roger, Squawk 1200. Have a nice day, sir.
So what we're going to demonstrate here is the B-1's ability to strike from home, hit a target en route with updates from the airborne command post. So we're going to take off from here with a planned target kill box and a set of target coordinates that last known location of the convoy that we're going to strike. En route, we will get an email in the cockpit, basically, that will tell us this is our latest update of where the convoy has moved, and that's what we're going to go strike.
The B-1B, born in controversy to replace an aging aircraft that just won't give up. Next. The B-1B Lancer is the result of a long and frustrating search for a heavy bomber to replace the B-52, now almost half a century old and still in service. Former B-52 pilot, now B-1 Bomber Branch Chief for the U.S. Air Force, Major Mick Guthels.
The B-52 started with really something that looked much like the B-47, but it was brought on strictly as a high-altitude kind of system. Capability into the high 40s, 40,000 feet, 6,000 mile kind of range. When it came out, it was the largest aircraft produced. It still has 8 engines. It's got about 185 feet wingtip to wingtip and about 140 feet long. Fuel is carried in the wings.
No heavier bomber has ever gone into production. The B-52 requires special runways to accommodate its weight and size. It was the backbone of Strategic Air Command, a high-altitude bomber capable of delivering hydrogen bombs anywhere on the face of the Earth. The B-52 gave its name to everything from rock bands to cocktails. It was an icon of the Cold War.
I was kind of a Cold War baby because I was born in Los Alamos, New Mexico. So I was brought up in that society of, of the nuclear world. When I came in, I started flying B-52s. I showed up at my first base, and I got certified to sit alert and to do the nuclear mission. We called it sitting alert, but it was really living alert. In B-52s, we'd show up on Thursday morning. We'd have all our gear with us, all our cold weather gear, all our life support gear, our helmets, and we would go inside the alert facility. It had the living facility, and then it also had the alert ramp. And out on the alert ramp would be however many airplanes you had sitting alert. We would study our sortie for a couple of hours, and then we would go and prepare to respond to whatever the National Command Authority felt was required. You knew it like the back of your hand, but it was one of those that you still never wanted to have to do.
For almost 3 decades of the tension-filled nuclear standoff between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, the B-52 crews of Strategic Air Command were on standby, ready to race to their aircraft, briefed for missions they would never fly. Many doubted the slow B-52s were capable of penetrating Soviet defenses. Confirmation came in May 1960, when an American U-2 spy plane flying at over 70,000 feet was shot down over the Soviet Union.
Признаете ли вы себя виновным в этом?
Do you plead guilty to the charges listed?
Yes, I plead guilty.
Честь о признании Пауэрса.
Pilot Gary Powers' trial was an embarrassment militarily and politically. Powers' shattered U-2 showed the B-52s were vulnerable to a new generation of surface-to-air missiles, or SAMs. Military planners decided speed was the answer to SAMs, and the race was on. Convair built the B-58 Hustler. It could fly at twice the speed of sound, but there's a penalty to high speed, fuel consumption. The B-58 had to be refueled after 60 minutes of high-speed flight. It was scrapped. North American came up with the XB-70 Valkyrie, a titanium and stainless steel giant capable of Mach 3 flight. It was a costly failure. Only 2 were built. With no replacement in sight, the 600-strong B-52 fleet was quickly updated. The aircraft stuffed with electronic countermeasures. New tactics evolved. The B-52s would penetrate Soviet airspace at treetop level using terrain avoidance radar. In the mid-60s, with the escalation of the Vietnam War, some B-52s were modified to carry conventional bombs. They delivered punishing loads of high explosive over South Vietnam and over the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos and Cambodia with limited success. Late in the war, they were sent north to bomb Hanoi. There they encountered highly effective Soviet SAMs. 15 B-52s were shot down over the North Vietnamese capital. Scores of B-52 crew members joined the ranks of U.S. prisoners of war. A replacement for the B-52 had to be able to cruise long distances at subsonic speeds, then make ground-hugging dashes at Mach 2. The only possible answer, a wing that moved forward and back. With the F-111 Aardvark, many of the engineering problems in building a swing wing were resolved.
Then Rockwell had this great concept for swing wing aircraft that had high altitude, low altitude capability, fantastic speed, great range, enter the B-1A. Their first airplane came online, entered test. Congress and the President funded them for 5 aircraft and about 40 engines so that we could really get and shake out all the cobwebs in this strategic program. And that was a swing wing aircraft, variable geometry, gave all the performance you needed. High speed, and then when you wanted to land the airplane, it was a reasonable speed across the fence, and it was great. At the same time, though, we also saw the emergence of air-launched cruise missiles, things that would really enhance the B-52.
The B-1 at $250 million a copy, at a time when many felt the day of the banned bomber was over, provoked a long and bitter political debate. President Jimmy Carter killed the program, but left the Air Force 4 B-1s for testing and development. When Ronald Reagan took office, he renewed the B-1 program, ordered 100 built. The aircraft, now called the B-1B, was redesigned. It sacrificed high altitude for greater range and payload and a reduced radar signature. It was one of the final nails in the Soviet coffin.
It kind of changed the world because it was a leap in technology that we forced the Soviets to keep up with and to defend against.
All through these events, hundreds of B-52s remained on alert, ready to fly nuclear bombs to the Soviet Union. B-1B crews, including Mick Guthels, joined them on nuclear standby.
I was on the last full alert tour, sitting alert with the airplanes. I remember it real clearly. I was sitting there at my father's retirement party, and I saw it on the news. President Bush had pulled all the airplanes off of alert. I think that every single person that ever sat alert and every single person in the National Command Authority never wanted that mission to happen.
1991 and the Gulf War. The Americans unleashed many of their new weapons, smart bombs and the stealth F-117 fighter bomber. Flying right behind them, the venerable B-52.
The first couple nights the B-52 was there. A friend of mine was on one of the very first airplanes to go in, and they went in low altitude and struck their targets low altitude. He felt they were quite lucky to escape with their lives because of the threat. The anti-aircraft artillery was intense. We immediately changed our tactics to a high-altitude platform because we could suppress their missiles, and that was much more survivable against the AAA. The airplane went from striking key point target kind of things to some carpet bombing so that we could keep the pressure on the Republican Guard.
The B-1B was not deployed in Desert Storm. At the time, its bomb bays were still loaded with hydrogen bombs. Today, the B-1B gives the U.S. a full inventory of bomb delivery aircraft. The B-1B is complemented by the extravagantly expensive B-2 stealth bomber. And there's still the B-52.
The future is that we have these long-range capable aircraft that are both nuclear and conventional. We also have a growing need for multiple missions. Now we see the B-52 as primarily a standoff kind of platform, while it still retains the penetration capability. So we see it launching cruise missiles, which is a critical part to the way we want to employ our forces, the expeditionary forces. So if you can envision a strike package going forward with all different kinds of airplanes, there are all kinds of things out there that we would want to hit long range. And that's what we're seeing in this expeditionary air forces, is that we can go where we need to go and be there when we need to be there.
A close-up look at the B-1B next. With its new role as a conventional heavy bomber, the B-1B may finally have found a function to fit its incredible performance. Pilot Trap Kennedy.
I fly the B-1. It's a nickname of the crew, all the air crew, and most people work around and call it the Bone, the B-1. They spell it out that way, so it's the Bone. The official nickname for it is actually the Lancer. The B-1 flies incredibly well. It doesn't have the roll rate or the G available that the fighter aircraft have, but except for that, I have a stick just like fighter aircraft, and it's a very stable and a very quick-to-respond aircraft. A lot of people equate it's the Cadillac for low level. You can fly low level 200 feet, and it's incredibly smooth. You'd be amazed at how smooth it is. It's just like driving in your car on the highway.
Co-pilot of the B-1B, Captain Mark Snapper Bennett.
Well, the B-1 has a very streamlined features with the curves on the airframe. If you look at the features from the front with the nose and how the flow right from there and the curves go all the way back down the airframe, it really lends to a smaller radar cross-section, which was basically the beginnings of the stealth technology. Also, the fuselage, with the way it's designed, it's used as a lifting body, and a lot of the lift from the aircraft actually comes from the body itself. The wing is a very unique feature of the aircraft in its variable geometry. In the current configuration of 15 degrees, That allows us to take off at higher gross weights in a shorter amount of distance. It also allows us to do a combat departure, which is a rapid climb and escape from an enemy attacking an airfield. Once we're up at altitude, we can sweep the wings back to 25 degrees. That allows us to optimize fuel flows and our airspeeds for longer durations and distances. Then when we're ready to hit the target and ingress into a threat area, we can sweep the wings all the way aft at 67.5. That allows us to go at the higher speeds and go all the way down to our low altitude of 200 feet. The engineers designed in the split stabs on the tail that when we turn, it gives us the more rapid response by those stabs splitting and more cornering ability. We have 4 General Electric F101 afterburning engines. Each engine has 30,000 pounds of static thrust, tremendous amount of horsepower. But with that horsepower and all that thrust comes a lot of fuel flow. So what portions of the fuselage aren't being used by bomb bays, avionics, and the aircrew, the rest is the fuel tanks.
The B-1B at full power burns 1,000 gallons of fuel a minute. Its tanks carry 165,000 pounds of fuel. It's big. Gross takeoff weight, the combined weight of aircraft, fuel, crew, and bomb load, 477,000 pounds. Captain Danielle Lynn Hawkins is responsible for maintenance of the 34th Bomb Squadron's 9 B-1Bs.
I have over 240 personnel in my flight. They encompass several specialties, defensive avionics, offensive avionics, hydraulics, electro-environmental systems, the people that load the aircraft with bombs and flares. It's a very labor-intensive aircraft. It takes about 38 man-hours per flying hour to keep the aircraft up in the air. It's one of the highest man-hour rates per the Air Force.
The aircraft's bomb bays, originally designed to carry only nuclear warheads, have been modified to carry the full range of a new generation of smart bombs. Or it can carpet bomb, like the B-52.
We carry a heck of a lot of weapons, and with that, the lethality that goes along with that. We can carry 84 Mark 82, which is 500-pound class weapons.
When you drop a full load of like 84 Mark 82s out of a B-1, those are 500-pound munitions. It's quite a feeling because the weapons are coming out at a very rapid pace in order to keep the stick length on the ground to a short distance. The feeling is just, you feel the whole aircraft rumble and shake. Also, the nose will usually pitch up a little bit where the aircraft will try to climb as the weight of the aircraft decreases. We have a system that automatically pumps fuel to help adjust for that weapons drop.
One of the newest things we're going to get on the B-1 is the JDAM, the Joint Direct Attack Munition. What we're going to carry is 24 of those weapons, 8 in each bay. What we're going to try and change the thinking to is how many targets can we kill with this one sortie. And the JDAM will enable us to do that with the B-1.
The JDAM, 2,000 pounds of high explosive, a precision weapon. Dropped from a B-1B, it makes GPS-determined corrections during its fall as it homes in on its target. The bomber carries no air-to-air missiles for defense. It relies on electronic countermeasures, flares, and chaff.
The biggest thing that the B-1 has that makes it different from other airplanes is our terrain following radar. And what that enables us to do is we can fly any weather, any kind of visibility. So at night, in the middle of the night with no moon, we can fly anywhere from 200 foot to 2,000 foot terrain following, completely hands-off.
We've got some exciting new technology in the aircraft. There's 3 pieces of equipment all tied together. One is called JTIDS, which is Joint Tactical Information Distribution System. It's a big data link in the sky, linking all sorts of sensors together in one network. We can get all sorts of stuff from that, the most important being different radar pictures from different players out there. The other 2 pieces of that, one is called MSTS, which is Multi-Source Tactical System. We're flying along, somebody retargets us to something we've never seen before, and we get an image of that target that they want us to attack. The other piece of equipment is called Combat Track 2, which is very simply just a GPS and some software. Bounce the information up to a satellite and it bounces back to all sorts of other people. We can email back and forth just like at the office, so we get target changes that way as well. Anything that's moving out there that can be tracked by radar, we can now go schwack it.
During the EFX-98 experiment, changing target information will be relayed to the bombers by the palletized Expeditionary Operations Center. The Operations Center was built in 9 months using off-the-shelf technology. It can set up shop anywhere and provide the bombers with information from a global communications net within minutes. The concept for the Airborne Operations Center came from the Wing's think tank called Battle Lab. The lab's Major Tim Apple.
So the concept is you get the notice, you throw the pallet, you power it up, you get going where you need to go, and we took advantage of this time to mission plan.
We'll probably be the first jet taken off as the Expedition Operations Center, but we could be followed as less as an hour behind us as the B-1s taking off launching to a certain spot. Well, that's obviously beyond the normal line of sight of radio communications. We'll now use it beyond the line of sight, that satellite technology, to pass that information to the B-1s, to get the information that the National Command Authorities have passed as updates, be it the change in the rules of engagement en route. We can now mission plan for those guys and send it to them over the horizon so that they have time to study before they actually get into the combat area.
The U.S. Air Force is throwing everything it has into its EFX-98 experiment, including its new information-gathering UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. They take aerial photographs and infrared images and transmit them to the Airborne Operations Center.
If the UAV can take pictures of the things that are of interest, get those back, time-critical events back to that command decision, and get that injected into the system, then we can get the bombers onto the targets while there's still a target on the ground that we need to hit.
We have the capabilities of flying with a day camera and an infrared camera that'll be able to find vehicles or personnel out in the range. We have the capability of flying up to 16,000 feet mean sea level.
So we're using the internet, we're using direct line communication, using satellite technology, enrolling that all in there to develop our concepts on, again, on how to move the information and not necessarily the people.
All we need is power for the thing, any kind of power, and we'll adapt to that and plug it in and get it going and keep operating and keep planning. And one thing that we've learned, and I mean since the days of Genghis Khan, is the fog of war and the changes. There's so many changes that are happening minute by minute, not just within the 17 hours. So we need to have the ability to react to those, adapt to those. And that's what it gives us.
EFX-98, the future of air power. Next. The 366th on ready alert for EFX-98. The ability of the U.S. to give its shrinking Air Force global reach depends on these experiments. At 0 hour, the Operations Center pallet rolls into the KC-135 tanker that will carry it out in advance of the bombers and their supporting fighters.
Ogre 2-1 and 2-2, they're their primaries, and this is the last chance to make sure everyone has got all the information they need to go perform the mission. At 16:10, we'll get our final update from the EOC. At that point, we'll basically transition from the Beyond Line of Sight initiative into theater assets and theater updates. Approximately 100 people total going, including maintenance and operators. And as far as for flyers, we're bringing 6 crews.
The Expeditionary Force carries all of its key personnel with it. Replacement crews for the bombers, maintenance experts, specialists to man the portable operations center. 2 squadrons of F-15s, 1 of F-16s, 36 fighters and fighter bombers will accompany the B-1Bs. In the target area, they'll sweep ahead of the bombers, destroying SAM and radar sites, clearing the skies of enemy aircraft. While the strike force is still assembling, its commanding officer, General Schmidt, is heading for the target area in his airborne command post.
So I'm on the airplane with essentially a pit crew. I've got communicators, I have people who can help me build a base, I have people who can help me mission plan and that sort of thing. Behind us, about an hour, I have a couple bombers and I have a virtual force. If we needed to, we could be tasked in the air. the way the scenario reads, we're heading to our base, we get tasked.
My flight control check good, you have the aircraft? Roger, I have the aircraft. Stall on input switches set. Go.
Hostilities were just declared, so they've broken out while we've been airborne. And now we've been tasked to make a strike.
Hostilities have just been declared. We just received word over the combat track 2. Excellent, get the candle advance out.
The invasion area for EFX 98 is in Florida. There, units of the 82nd Airborne Division drop on an airbase and secure its perimeter. Real-time images flow into the Operations Center palette.
We're getting the common operational picture, which is a live air picture from the place that we're going. We're getting tremendous weather data, and we're getting great imagery. Basically, we're getting all the things we need to mission plan. So the mission planner is over my left shoulder here. That's exactly what they're doing. They're reacting to those inputs.
They're going to exit the container to the east, flow back around, and enter back into the marshalling area.
Once they've got this thing all together, I look at that plan and make sure it makes sense. That gives us the ability to strike, survive, and then also be able to recover and be able to regenerate and strike again. Once I've seen that, it makes sense. It passes the sanity check. I'll approve it. We put it back in the system. We shoot it out to those B-1s.
The B-1B's four-man crew is a tight-knit team.
Stick steer there, Snapper. Stick steering.
My job as the second pilot is making sure everything works in our aircraft. You know, I'm kind of keeping track of all the systems and keeping track of the timing. I set the flow for basically, you know, keeping the crew together.
We're usually pretty busy, you know, because we're trying to stay ahead of the aircraft, always trying to stay ahead of the pilot's eyes. So that entails using the radar, or on the defensive side of the house, using the LQ-161, which is our defensive avionics suite, to see, you know, what kind of upcoming threats might be out there, whether it be fighters, surface-to-air missile sites, or AAA sites.
Well, just about 20 minutes ago, we changed the track of the aircraft, and we got a good contact with the satellite, and we've received all the information that we need to do what we did here.
Striker targets vary anywhere from
Mission briefing is just about complete. I'll be blessing this in just a couple of minutes, and we'll shoot that out to the B-1s, and they'll retarget with all their planning.
You know what? Our freaking track 2 dropped off again. So we got our update, right? Yeah. Do you want me to try and log back on again? Yeah.
On the B-1B and in the command aircraft, crews are fighting time and computer glitches.
If you want to get exact times, we can ask.
One of our systems that was essential to us getting information went down for some inexplicable reason right at a point that we needed it.
Dale, can you call it up in Word? Actually, what you want to look at, though?
Now the scrambling begins, because now the time that I had, 2 hours to send information out, I was cut down to about an hour, and that's where the decision-making process comes in.
And just let everybody know we've got the target change. It's looking good. And we're about to pass it on to number 2. Ogre 1-2, Ogre 1-1.
The whole concept was that the B-1s were launching out of the continental United States en route to some country where there was an attack going on. And we were there to halt an armored column that was attacking.
Roger, target is a convoy of approximately 10 vehicles.
And we're going to go ahead and prosecute the target with 3 BDU-50s, which would be simulating a partial load of 56 Mark 82s.
Yep, that's the target. Mapping. Acquired. It's looking good. Bass 107, Bass 1. You ready to go? Yes, we are. Excellent. Sonic select switch on S.
We ended up putting bombs on target, literally striking an armored column with a dumb bomb from 500 feet doing about 560 knots. We hadn't seen that target once and mountain home, and we ended up successfully striking it.
Who's the best pilot you ever saw? That would be Phil Fatani.
You know, when we took off, we did what we knew. We might have put a certain kind of munition on the aircraft because we knew what kind of targets we were going to hit. If we didn't know that, then we put different kinds of munitions in different stations in the weapons base of the B-1. While we're en route, we began to fill in the blanks. Now we know it's armor, or it's artillery, or it's precision-guided munitions on a specific target. Now we can fill in the blanks and make that an effective strike sortie.
Hostilities have been declared. Please respond via track and void.
The bombers refuel for the flight to the secured airbase to obtain a new crew and a new bomber.
Oscar 2-2, break away, break away, break away.
Going to 20.
The Expeditionary Operations Center, the EOC, arriving at the secured base on its KC-135, is swiftly rolled off the tank. The mission specialists hit the ground running and set up to plan follow-up attacks.
We forklifted the pallet off of the aircraft, and 38 minutes later, we had power connected, and we were full up and running. We had the same connectivity that we did on the aircraft. So here I am in a tent in a air base area in some who knows where in the world, and we're running a very complex operation.
We had finished completing the mission planning that we needed for the next day within about 2.5 hours after we landed here.
By the time the B-1Bs land, their next mission has been planned. To EFX Commander Lieutenant General Lanny Trapp, the key is a massive flow of information.
We were very successful in moving information from the rear operations center forward to the EOC, which was en route, and they in turn sent that same information forward to the B-1, and they very successfully changed targets and actually dropped their bombs within about 30 feet of the new targets.
For pilot Trapp Kennedy and his crew, time for relaxation and self-congratulation.
We got everything we needed, and we were able to hit the target on time, bombs on time, on target. It was excellent to have that much information in the cockpit.
Woo! Bombs on target. You hear any results yet or anything? Things like this that really bring us together. It gives us the opportunity to really, get the crew together and work toward this objective, and demonstrate this new capability.
We got V formation armor, and it looked sweet. Target looked great to the pilots. Successfully struck the target. So I had to spin the real thing. We're going to put a bunch of sensor-fused weapons over the bad guys, and there'd be a bunch of burning tanks out there right now.
For a week, the B-1B crew will mount raid after raid on the imaginary invasion force. The pelletized operations center is set up in a tent. It brings together everything needed for effective command and control.
We've put over 55 sorties out in the postulated combat area, and we've already tabulated results. We've taken targets off the list, putting new targets back on. So everything's going very, very well right now.
I think what we find in our Expeditionary Air Force, as the Cold War has ended and we have become more a home-based force, that's the way we're going to project power across the world. If you're virtually connected, place shouldn't make a difference. As we all know in this computer age, as we move forward in information ops, that the name of the game is whoever knows the most will probably come out on top.
This has been all about technology. But when it's all over with, it gets down to the people, the support, the understanding of mission, the sacrifices that the families go through. And then on the other side, the folks that go on these deployments and work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So I'm extremely proud of them, and always will be. I always remember this is the greatest command I've ever had.
The climax of EFX 98, a raw demonstration of American air power. For an audience of 2,000 Air Force officers, the Air Expeditionary Force unleashes its devastating weapons. F-15 and F-16 strike aircraft take out targets with pinpoint accuracy. The B-1Bs lay down their carpet of destruction.
From what we've seen, it's been a great experiment. I had one individual who had participated in the exercise, a field grade officer, a major, tell me, "This has been great, boss." He says, We're moving from the prop age to the jet age in command and control.
The 366th Air Expeditionary Wing, a self-contained Air Force, the first of 10, ready to cross oceans and continents to stop aggression.
For more information on the history of aviation, visit Discovery Channel's website, exn.ca.